10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 0.
Extreme radio for extreme times. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640.
Hi, I'm the Spaceman. This is A View from Space. I want to welcome you in if you're driving around town right now or if you're at work listening to AM 640. Welcome in. Or if you're checking me out on channel 865 on Shaw Direct, picking up the signal there, I welcome you in also. Or if you're listening to me on your 3 or your 4G personal communication device via the Stream the World software, I welcome you in too. Or if you're what some call the best seat in the house, to check out A View from Space. Parked in front of your Mac or your PC, logged on to 640toronto.com, picking up the live audio streaming there, I welcome you in. Wherever you are in the world, I welcome you in. This week saw the Illuminati-controlled mass media ratchet up their propaganda assault on the world to foment their coveted goal of staging the 21st crusade, also known as World War III, to its highest intensity level since September 11th, 2001. Did you expect it? I did. This, of course, in typical Illuminati fashion, invoked numerology that was all timed to begin precisely on the anniversary. But wait, this wasn't just another anniversary of 9/11. No, too much happened this week. Why did so many things transpire on this particular week? Because this anniversary of 9/11 was very special. That's why. It wasn't like all the others. This one was the 11th anniversary of the 9/11 World Trade Center and Pentagon attacks, which fell on the Tuesday of this week, and was used to ratchet up the all-out assault on its intended target, you and I. Whether you're a Christian, a Muslim, a Hindu, agnostic, atheist, or any other religion, it doesn't matter. It was aimed at you and I. Tuesday, the day it fell on this week, the day it all started, is really when the business world goes to war. Know why? Big business decisions and big moves don't happen on Mondays. No, they happen on Tuesdays. Tuesdays is named after the Norse god Tyr. Tyr is the warrior god in the Norse religion. Odin and Thor divide the functions of the religious and secular leaders, and Vanir are the producers in the Norse religion. Tyr, the warrior god, helped divide the functions of the religious and secular leaders. That's why it's done on Tuesdays. The Romans named Tuesday after their god of war, Mars. 11, of course, is a sacred number to the Illuminati. When 11 is multiplied by the perfect number 3, the number 33 is produced. A number of tremendous occult importance. World War I ended on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. In 1933, triple 11. And remember, trebling the 11, or any number for that matter in witchcraft, is the highest magnification possible to exude the most out of the spell cast. 1933, Adolf Hitler and President Franklin Roosevelt both came to power. Why bring these names up? Both these men were committed to the establishment of the New World Order, and their actions committed to the establishment of that end impacted humanity more than any two leaders so far yet to date. It was also in 1933 that the first Humanist Manifesto was issued. You don't understand First Humanist Manifesto? Man is God, okay? Former President Herbert W. Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, in a speech to Congress September 11th, 1990, said, "This is," meaning the war in Iraq that he was about to start, the Gulf War, "is a rare opportunity to move toward an historic period of cooperation. Out of these troubled times, a new world order can emerge." Those words came out of George Herbert Walker Bush's mouth, September 11th, 1990. Then, exactly 11 years later, on precisely that very same day, September 11th, 2001, what happened? The Illuminati attacked America. Now, exactly 11 years since that event of September 11th, 2001, September 11th, 2012, this past Tuesday, the Americans are attacked once more by the Illuminati. Their ambassador to Libya is killed along with 3 others. 4 are dead. 4 is the number of foundation. The foundation of what, you ask? The planned and soon to come all-out ideological war between the Western world and the Islamic world. That'll be the third and final war to finally convince, actually put the entire world on its knees begging for a stop in this grotesque bloodshed that is to come. And we'll cry out for anything, and yes, accept a one-world government authority. And it'll, of course, like they always tell you, it'll be for your own good. It's the Spaceman, Talk Radio AM 640, and I'm just getting started.
Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640.
I'm the guy to call Space. You can email me. I have 2 addresses. I communicate by email only, space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. And thanks for the ones that you've already sent me. Many of them this week, because of the events, started earlier in the week, saying can't wait till tonight's show. Now, as I said, 11, a very important number. 11 years later, another Islamic Judeo-Christian line drawn in the sand. Out of these troubled times, a new world order can emerge, echoing again former President George Herbert Walker Bush's comments to Congress September 11th of 1990, 11 years later, 2001, September 11th, World Trade Center attack. 11 years after that, American ambassador to Libya killed with 3 others. 4 are dead. The number of foundation of this planned all-out ideological war. Here's a quick tutorial. A little more on the number 11. That is, if you're a new listener to AVFS on Talk Radio AM 640. If you've been a regular listener, this isn't anything you've never heard. In the Mel Gibson movie, The Patriot, evoking patriotism in America, a few minutes into the movie, still during the introduction credits, while they're rolling, you see Mel Gibson weighing a rocking chair. And he says, 9 pounds, 11 ounces. Perfect. That's perfect. A few seconds later, the rocking chair is destroyed. It's the very beginning of Mel Gibson's Patriot movie. Now, there are a total of 54 11s, where 11 comes up. That's inextricably connected to the 9/11 event of 2001, not counting other global events that also have an 11 connotation, as I brought up with the First World War ending on the 11th day of the 11th month, in the 11th hour. And according to Hebrew scriptures, September 11th, 1999, was the 6,000th anniversary of Adam's creation by God. September 11th, by the way, is the new year for Israelis, and was year 1 on the Hebrew calendar when Adam was created. That's how they start marking time on the Hebrew calendar. That would make 2012's event of the 11th of September, this 11th anniversary of September 11, 2001, the 6,013th year on the Hebrew calendar. 6, the number of man, 13, the number of the cult. This week's 11th anniversary of the 9/11 event has been used to launch their propaganda news cycle into the most intense assault blitz since 9/11, and is aimed directly at its intended target, the brainwashed. September 11th is the 254th day of the year in the Gregorian calendar in non-leap years. And that breaks down to, yes, an 8/11. It was one of the 54 11s inextricably connected to September 11th, 2001. There's 111 days remaining until the end of that non-leap year. A mirrored 11. In leap years, and this is a leap year, 2012, September 11th was the 255th day of the year, with only 110 days remaining in this leap year. 255 breaks down in numerology to a 12, or more precise, to a 3. Yes, the royal number 3. So, that'd mean there must be some kind of invocation of the royals to appear in this propaganda news cycle as well. And lo and behold, there was. Involving, of all personages, the untouchables, the so far squeaky clean Prince William and his new bride, Catherine, now the Duchess of Cambridge. And that story has legs, if you pardon the expression, for these bare breasts. More and more newspapers around the world are now beginning to publish those photos. Ireland is the latest, and Italy will be the next after. But that took place later on in this week. First, things had to be heated up considerably before that Illuminati event unfolded. And if you don't think that was in the plans, you are grossly mistaken. The first and most impactful to get it all going this week was the Innocence of Muslim movie, of which there really is no movie. There really isn't. There's simply a 13-minute, 51-second trailer for it that you can find. And you can find it anywhere. As a matter of fact, in the Islamic countries, they left it up on YouTube so that everyone would hear about it, and those that would or wanted to did sneak a peek. Just why was just a trailer made? Simple. All you need, really, is to shoot enough scenes to portray the Islamic world's highest held religious figure, Muhammad, to be a bossy, ornery, bloodthirsty, power-hungry, pompous, predatorial, conniving, let me see, what else did they do? Oh yeah, control freak who had pedophiliacs as his closest allies. That's all. You only need about 14 minutes for that. This Sam Basile did it in just 13 minutes and 51 seconds. The agent provocateur, who, by the way, is well known to pull these kinds of stunts off and now has been given one interview. Is it CNN? No. Is it NBC? No. Then who is it? He gave one interview to the FBI. Yes, Sam, short for Samael. The name of the serpent that raped Eve in the Garden of Eden to begin the half-man, half-beast bloodline that gave birth to Cain. Eve then showed Adam the trick, talked him into it. Abel was born. Basile Sam's last name, of course, is a bacteria that spreads a lot like a virus. Even the name, because the Illuminati makes sure those are inlaid, too, into the story. So this Sam Bastille did it in 13 minutes and 51 seconds. Job done. Released it on YouTube. Remember, I told you that's what YouTube's really for. To proliferate this kind of thing for the Illuminati worldwide with just one posting. That's all that's required. And it goes around the world. This is one incredible tool used by the Illuminati, and that's exactly what it's really up there for. When they're not using it, well, you can use it. Post what you would like to put on it. But YouTube is the go-to media that supposedly goes viral. You know how viral actually weirdly works? This is how it works. They first, on the Illuminati-controlled mass media, come on and say, these pictures of this baby pushing this car up a hill has gone viral. And you hear about it, because it's on all the newscasts. And they say, it's going viral on YouTube, so you go to your machine, or you pick up your smartphone, and I really believe that some phones are smarter than the people that are holding them. Go to it and believe it that, hey, everybody's doing this because the mass media told you to, and it doesn't go viral until they tell you it went viral because you all go to check it out. It's a pretty simple piece of psychology that most people don't really stop and think about for a moment. But I just laid it out for you. But it's just a view from space, talk radio, AM 640. I'm back in a minute. I'm the Spaceman. It's a view from space. It's talk radio, AM 640. Emails to space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. DP writes, space. Here in the States, all consumer music and videos are released only on Tuesday. This is how it's always been. It makes more sense now. Take care. Signed DP, AVFS, number 1. Hey, you know what about number 1? I could care less. Don't care. Only want to convince one person. One person. That's all. You. And I don't even want to convince you that, oh, this guy's totally correct. No, I just want you to question authority now and say, wait a minute. Maybe, just maybe, he has something there. Case in point. DDR. Hi, Space. I'm a long-time listener, and on many occasions I'll hear you mention the name Two-Ball Cane and the explanation of two balls and a cane. 007. Well, I was watching the latest brainwashing alien film, Prometheus, and in the flick there's a lot of symbolic codes, imagery you probably spotted already, but here's one you may have missed. In the middle of the film, there's this very, very old man in a wheelchair. The camera angle cuts to a side view of the old man in the chair. The old man then asks one of his assistants to pass him his cane, while he has his right hand on the handrail of the right rear wheel. If you look closely enough at the wheel, you can see it has a handrail that looks like a big O. And the wheel itself is a big O. and he reaches for his cane, of course in the shape of a 7. I saw 007 very clearly. Thought of your show immediately when I saw that, and because of that show, I see things that normally I tend to miss or just totally dismiss, ignore. Signed, DDR. Now, I've broken down the numbers of the 11 connotation in this latest caper because it is the 11th anniversary of 9/11 this past week. As I said, a leap year, and there's 255th day was September 11th this week, which invokes the royal number, and of course the royal story did turn up. But not before the Illuminati on YouTube proliferated this video by Sam Basile called Innocence of Islam. And now, they say it went viral, but kept it up for days after, so the attention could be drawn to it, and people in Islamic countries got to get a peek at it because it was even still on YouTube. And if, let's face it, everything was legit, it would not be available in, say, the largest Islamic country in the world, say Indonesia, for a moment longer, but it was left up for not 1 but 2 days. The Tuesday and the Wednesday. And in some places, even for the 3rd day. It went viral all right. Everybody's attention was drawn to it, especially in the Islamic countries, so that they could blame the video on the death of an American ambassador and 3 of his men in Benghazi, Libya. If it wasn't such a serious thing, as it caused the death of 4 people, it'd be absolutely laughable. Why? Well, think about it. First of all, you help take down the leader of a country, pushing for a no-fly zone, then finally do it, arming the rebels, aiding the rebels, putting money into it, shooting fake footage of how it was going, spreading it around the world, this being America and Britain, and at the behest and aid of Britain, of course, and Canada, the Commonwealth country, who damn well better follow lockstep. After all, it's a Commonwealth country. Then you open up a U.S. embassy while the factions are still grappling for total control of that country. And next, you get the black magic witch, Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State, to appoint a new ambassador to Libya just 4 months ago, by the way, and then move this blood sacrifice, this new ambassador, into a lightly guarded building, not even guarded by Marines, and this country is not stable yet, but not even Marines are guarding it. Just ordinary rebel Libyan fighters and police, telling the ambassador, this new ambassador, that in a difficult situation there is a safe house that has been carefully arranged for him to escape to if, that is, if, but not likely, things would get a little too hot so he could escape to. And that was the place where he died with his 3 other compatriots. It was the safe house where Christopher Stevens and those other 3 men were murdered. The safe house actually became the sacrificial altar for the rewards reaped by this grotesque, ritualistic blood sacrifice killing. I believe this is the closer, the last act to be organized by Hillary Clinton of all the black magic she's performed in the role of Secretary of State these last 4 years. Hillary Clinton has been awfully busy in her role as the 67th Secretary of State. That's a hidden 13, representing the cult, spiriting covert messages to Illuminati provocateurs. She has the distinction of being the busiest of all secretaries of state all time, visiting 103 countries in her tenure so far. I believe she's gone to her last. That's another hidden 13, by the way, 103 countries. When her plane touched down at Andrews Air Force Base outside Washington on her last trip abroad, this former First Lady of the United States of America ended her travels with a 13-day journey. Yes, another 13, bringing it to the highest magnification possible for the desired outcome from a spellcast. 3, which was her whole time as Secretary of State. The last trip took her 27,000 miles. And 9, the satanic, egotistical number that always returns to itself. That's about 2,000 more than the circumference of the Earth. That was just one trip. It was in her last, I believe. It was over to and through Europe, then to Asia, then doubling back to the Middle East to make sure everything was in place for September 11th anniversary. This last event did produce the desired magnification of the spell cast of a brewing of an ideological war developing between Judeo-Christianity and Islam. The trailer for the movie called Innocence of Islam, of which there is no such movie, is being touted by the Illuminati-controlled mass media to be the reason for the violence that occurred after that video was released. In first Libya, where the violence broke out, we're told, with the murder of the 4 in the embassy. Then we're told it spread to Yemen, then on to Egypt, after that the Sudan, then it grew, went to Lebanon, then Indonesia, then Bangladesh, then to the Sudan, the capital of Khartoum. The British and German embassies were also attacked there. And in Egypt, just yesterday, the police killed angry protesters protesting against the anti-Muhammad video in Tahrir Square. How obvious is this? The actors that starred in this trailer all say they were lied to, and that their lines were all actually not the ones they said, but were all overdubbed and not the original ones they spoke. Yeah, right. That let them off the hook for responsibility, you see. So they're not going to be tracked down by the Illuminati-controlled mass media going, why would you ever want to act in something like that? And as for the supposed director, Sam Basile, well, nowhere to be seen on the Illuminati-controlled mass media at all. He seems to be the forgotten one, doesn't he, except for the FBI interview that just went down a few hours ago. Why isn't he making the rounds on talk shows, championing free speech? Well, I think you know why. It's better just to leave him. Believe it or not, some of the Western world think you should actually show this inflammatory video that's made to be simply sensationalistic, just to prove a point that they don't want to be told what to do in their own country. How childish is that? Let's just show it anyway. It's just grotesquely stupid, ugly, and ridiculous in its content. But we should be able to show it and see it because it's democracy. Well, is that the only reason? I wonder. Space back with more. On the other side of the break, it's AVFS Talk Radio, AM 640. I'm the guy that calls Space. You can email me, spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. Thanks so much for the ones you sent. I really appreciate them. I really do. Now, just before the break, and I just want to repeat this because I think it's kind of important. There are some people in the Western world that think you should actually show this inflammatory video because there are provocateurs lying in the weeds that actually want to put it in theaters now. Yeah. Just to say, look, see, we should be able to do what we want, okay? We can play this because they feel that Islam is infringing on their rights, and in some cases, that's actually happening, where they have more rights, per se, than, say, a Christian. Now, it's not Islam that are changing and bending these rules in your Western culture. I'll repeat it. It's not Islam or imams or caliphates bending rules and changing your laws in your Western culture. Who is it? It's your judicial system. They're doing it. The judicial system are making the changes. Blame your judicial system. They're to blame. They're controlled by the Illuminati, so good luck with that. They rule by the rule of law, and judges are appointed. The Merovingian sorcerer kings always have ruled by the rule of law, and it's always for your own good. Now, following all of the events that happened at the beginning of this week, the Royal Connection was about to enter the picture. Now, I believe that this was not something that just, whoa. Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, made a mistake. There happened to be a photographer who snapped some photos of her in in France, a totally and completely normal situation. I don't know, if you haven't been to Europe in a while, the sexual conduct is very different there to here in North America. Now, and the French laws, too, about publishing photographs without someone's consent that you got from a private villa, say. In Britain, you have to get permission. If it were in Britain, they could be charged. But in France, hey, the rule of law, remember? There's no law that says you have to ask them before you can publish. You can publish it if you got it. That's why the pictures of Lady Di were not photographs from inside of Britain. They were outside of Britain where the laws are different. So you see, they always cover. Merovingian sorcerer kings always have ruled by the rule of law. So these pictures of Princess William and the Duchess of Cambridge, the still newlyweds, the most famous couple on the planet, were out and about together and was at first only a pleasant backdrop to all this hatred and seething violence that was being portrayed on the Illuminati mass-controlled media. The usual for the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, you might say. All very benign. And as I say, pleasant. What with everyone waving and smiling and the little girls curtsying and offering flowers and welcoming the famed couple to their Muslim country. Then, on September 13th, the cult's number 13, the Thursday, which really began the couple's 9-day tour of the Far East and South Pacific, that is supposedly to mark Queen Elizabeth II's Diamond Jubilee, a pall was quickly cast over the trip and will be the marquee event with which this trip will now be remembered. Their first to a Muslim country, which just coincidentally, I'm sure, was the very same day chosen by the Illuminati, who control French Freemasonry, to have the French magazine Closer make the announcement that it was publishing topless photos of Catherine. For public consumption, the magazine claimed the pictures were taken on a guest house terrace in France, where William and Kate were on vacation earlier that month in France. Well, the guest house they referred to just happened to be Lord Linley's home. Who's Lord Linley, you might ask? Why, he's the cousin of Prince William. It's all kept in the family, you know, for the tightest possible control. Lord Linley is known in the workaday world of business as David Linley, who's an English furniture maker, and, oh yes, chairman of the famous auction house Christie's in the UK. He's the son of Queen Elizabeth II's only sister, Princess Margaret, the Countess of Snowdon. And his father is Anthony Armstrong Jones, who is the first Earl of Snowdon. Lord Linley's also a grandson of King George VI, father of Queen Elizabeth II, and is the 15th in line of succession to the British throne. 14 die, and this guy's king. And he is the 15th in line to 15 other Commonwealth realms and the heir apparent to the earldom of Snowdon. You know what an heir apparent is? An heir apparent is, this guy for sure is the next one. The heir presumptive is, well, he's not directly related, but there is no direct relation, so this guy's probably the guy they're going to pick. That's the heir presumptive. For instance, Prince William right now the Duke of Cambridge, is the heir presumptive to the throne of England, not the heir apparent. That's the next in line, which is Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales. So they were in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, their first sortie into a Muslim country. And look what happened. Prince William and Catherine started the big day by doing what, you say? Well, what else? After all, it was the real reason the pair found themselves in the Muslim country of Malaysia, for the big release, the publishing of the half-nude photos by the naughty French. They started their tour by visiting a mosque, of all places, of course, where Catherine donned a headscarf, long sleeves on her dress that came down to her ankles, the obligatory Muslim dress code of Islam in a mosque. Yes, as the world was looking at her bare breasts, she was covered head to foot in Malaysia. Quite a statement, wouldn't you say? They then smiled and shook hands with some of the hundreds of people who gathered to see them at the park near Kuala Lumpur's famous Petronas Twin Towers, which the cabal they represent owns and controls. Prince William then delivered a brief speech to corporate leaders, which the cabal controls, at a luncheon to underscore both countries' strong business ties. They also attended a tea party hosted by Britain's High Commissioner to Malaysia, who works for them, that included guests like Malaysian-born fashion designer Jimmy Choo and actress Michelle Yeoh, the designated high society of Malaysia. They're not into covering the body. They're into putting as skimpy clothes as possible on the most beautiful women that walk the catwalks at the fashion shows around the world. London, after all, is the capital of fashion, you know. It's not Milan. Jimmy Choo told reporters at the event that Kate's a fashion idol and an inspiration to our local designers. In other words, she's the top of the heap guy. The trip is not over in that Asia-Pacific area for William and Kate. And it's going to be very interesting, since there are more Muslim nations on the agenda to visit, to see what happens next. This is really the very first negative thing to come out concerning the future king, Prince William. And it's not really about him at all, is it really? He's still squeaky clean. It's that bride who took her top off in France. And someone was there to get the proof. Staged? Hey, your call. Space, back with more on AVFS after the break. This is Talk Radio, AM 640. Spaceman, AM 640 and a view from space. You can email me, spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. My resident numerologist, SR, writes, using simple English gematria. You know what English gematria is? It's just simply A equals 1, B equals 2, down to your 26th letter, the Z. Now, I want you to print out 9. Don't write the number. Write N-I-N-E. 911. And 1 is not the number, it's the word. Just print 911, Christopher Stevens, United States Libyan ambassador. Using simple English gematria, SR has found out it equals 666. And signs off as usual. Later, SR. Remarking just before he does that, just by chance, space. Unbelievable, isn't it? But true. It's black magic, numerology. Black magic. The Clintons. The Russell family go a long way back with the Illuminati. They're responsible for starting the Skull and Bones Order, the Pilgrim Society, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, as you may have been listening on the Mitt Romney Sun Worshippers Mormon show last week. Now, the Masonic Daughters of Isabella were also started by him. Archibald D. Russell was a Mason from Scotland, set up still other organizations. Scotland's played a key role in the Illuminati. One example of thousands is Mariner S. Eccles, governor of the Federal Reserve Board and supporter of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was a member of the wealthy Mormon Illuminati Eccles family, which came over from Scotland, by the way, this Mariner Eccles. Now, the Russells played a role in the opium trade in the early 1800s and early Mormonism. One of Russell's business partners was none other than Warren Delano Jr., chief of Russell and Company operations in Canton, China. And he was the grandfather of President Franklin Roosevelt. The Russell Company logo was a skull and crossbones. The Taft family, which is also related to George Bush by blood, by the way, and the Harriman family are a couple of families that have been intimately connected with the Skull and Bones Order for many years, which is an entry point into the Illuminati on the surface, just as an exclusive fraternity. Now, the Harriman family is also very prominent in former President Bill Clinton's life. Presidential advisor William Averell Harriman was born in New York City, was the heir to his father's Union Pacific Railroad fortune. Averell Harriman was the CEO of George Bush's father's company, Standard Oil, which became Exxon later. William Farish's father, whose daughter married Averell Harriman's nephew, was Jamestown's 400th anniversary celebratory with the Queen of England when she came to stay in Jamestown. When she came to stay in Kentucky, she stayed at William Farish II's house. Remember, she was in America on Jamestown's 400th anniversary when she was staying at that house. She's also a former U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom, 2001 to 2004. William Farish has served as chairman of Churchill Downs, home of the Kentucky Derby. He also owns the 1,800-acre Land's End farm near Lexington, Kentucky, a leading breeder of horses that competes around the world. Averell Harriman's wife was Pamela, who has played an extremely important part in Bill Clinton's life. Pamela Harriman raised more money for the Democratic Party than any other single person. That was printed in Newsweek magazine. She created a political action committee nicknamed PAM, P-A-M, PAMPAC. There are many connections made between Bill Clinton and Pamela Harriman. Can you guess why the Illuminati-controlled media somehow carefully keep their relationship secret? When Bill Clinton was in high school, he shook hands with President John Kennedy, who was a member of the top 13 Illuminati bloodlines. Now, the master of ceremonies at the affair where JFK and Clinton met was Winthrop Rockefeller. He was the master of ceremonies, another member of the top 13 Illuminati family, and at the time, governor of New York State. In the film clips of that event, which the establishment media have used. The Illuminati-controlled media edited out Winthrop Rockefeller from the scenes of Clinton and JFK shaking hands. Now, why do you think they did that? The Astor family, one of the top 13 families, was intimately connected to the creation of the Rhodes Scholarship. Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar and looked up to Professor Carroll Quigley, the archivist of the Council on Foreign Relations, as a mentor. The Quigley-Clinton connection opens the door to even more connections between Clinton and the Illuminati. Quigley sidetracked people by making people think the elite were Anglophiles who wanted the British to rule the world. Although the elite are partial to the English language as a universal language in their heart, their allegiance is not to Britain, but to Satan. Clinton has been compared to JFK and FDR by people. May be in a negative sense. The comparison is appropriate, though, I believe. Some of the things that stick out as red flags about Bill Clinton are ex-witches, many of them, now Christians, identify Bill Clinton's old running mate Al Gore as a witch also. And Al Gore has put the spell of global warming, now called climate change, around the world with his book that promotes many witchcraft themes like Mother Gaia worship. That's what Earth worship is. Al Gore has intimately worked with other men who are involved with the Illuminati. He also was close friends with Arm & Hammer, the Illuminati courier who shuttled back and forth between Moscow and America on a regular basis and had homes in both countries. Hammer bankrolled both Al Gore Jr. and his father, Al Gore Sr. Guess who was the senator representing the state of Tennessee when Martin Luther King was shot outside the motel in Memphis? Al Gore Sr. Al Gore and Bill Clinton raised their hands at the Democratic National Convention, declared their administration would be the new covenant. Bill Clinton's brother ended up in prison in connection to the illegal drug trade. State of Arkansas is a drug shipping state. That's why Bill Clinton was the governor of that state. When he was not governor any longer, they busted Bill's brother. Not many know this or even care, but Bill Clinton called his very first press conference as president-elect according to the astrologically correct full moon day. Bill Clinton, in his inaugural speech, said, I quote, "This ceremony is held in the depth of winter, but by the words we speak and the faces we show the world, we force the spring." Clinton repeated the words, "we force the spring," later in the speech, too. That expression is a very unusual expression. To force the spring is witchcraft language. In witchcraft and Satanism, Lucifer, or Baal, rises from the underworld on May 1st, also known as Beltane, a major European holiday, communism and the Illuminati's chief holiday, and Walpurgis. The May 1st rising brings forth the season of fertility, which the witches each year take credit for, by claiming that their magic rituals force the spring. The ritual magic that forces the spring is done on 3 Sabbats. The first is Imbolc, known by other names like Candlemas by the Catholics, Groundhog Day by you and I. The second is the vernal equinox, March 20th, in which blood and sex rituals are carried out. And the third is Beltane, May 1st, which is a fire festival. This is one of the fire festivals which people around the United States say they've witnessed from a distance. Witches believe that on May 1st, the female force completes her takeover from the male force. There are 12 cabinet members when they assemble with their head, Bill Clinton, which makes the number 13. Let me pause there. As Bill Clinton is about to choose to force the spring with his cabinet coven when I return on the other side of the break. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. This is AVFS. I'm Space. I'm the guy that calls Space. It's a View from Space. Talk Radio, AM 640. You can email me, spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. So I was saying, Bill Clinton, showing you some of the connections into the occult world with the Clintons, also including Hillary, and I mentioned earlier in the first hour on my thoughts on how this whole Libyan ambassador killing was actually a blood sacrifice set up by Hillary Clinton and has done many like jobs, if you like, for the cult around the world in her last 4 years. I believe she has now completed her final one, which has really filled the Illuminati-controlled mass media with plenty of ammunition to foment their ideological war. They're just itching to get going. Now, as I was saying, there are 12 cabinet members when they assemble. Bill Clinton, of course, their boss, when he is elected president in his final term, made 13. A coven has 12 members, and the high priest is the 13th member. Bill Clinton chose to force the spring with his cabinet coven. In true witchcraft tradition, the cabinet of Bill Clinton followed the pattern of forcing the spring in order for the female to overtake the male force. Clinton chose the position of Attorney General for a woman. The title General has a male connotation. All the rest of the cabinet members are called secretaries, which has female connotation. The Attorney General position was to be given to a woman. But in order for the witchcraft ceremony and timing to be right, the woman could not take over until after February 2nd, or Imbolc, which you know as Groundhog Day. And there had to be 3 female candidates, from which one is traditionally picked by the witchcraft coven. This is all according to witchcraft, how he set his cabinet up. This is why the selection of the Attorney General was not confirmed until February 2nd of 1993. And sure enough, all 3 candidates given by Bill Clinton were women, from which one was selected. Bill Clinton did indeed force the spring. What's more, Bill Clinton told you how he would force the spring in his inaugural speech. On the 666th word of his inauguration speech, you can look it up. The 666th word of that inauguration speech of Bill Clinton launched into a sentence on sacrifice. I quote, "It will not be easy. It will require sacrifice. But it can be done, and done fairly, not choosing sacrifice for its own sake, but for our own sake." End of quote. Clinton gave the hand signal of Satanists at the end of that speech. And Newsweek magazine headlined the story, "New Age President Takes Office, January 25, 1993. That Clinton would consider his cabinet a coven is not so far-fetched. Most of his cabinet was tied closely with the Illuminati. The Council on Foreign Relations is an upper level of the visible arm of the Illuminati. CFR is the equivalent of the 4 degrees of the Bavarian Illuminati. Now, many of these people didn't realize the full satanic implications of what they were doing or getting involved in. You look at the corruption, it was gradual, and that the lower levels had no idea what they were really involved in, though some probably suspected that they kind of knew what they were getting into. The basic ingredient of the lower levels was loyalty to their superiors because they believed they are in the elite's organization. Consider Bill Clinton and his cabinet, Slick Willie Clinton, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Bilderberger's participant in various Illuminati front organizations like the DLC, a Rhodes Scholar, and his wife Hillary. Known to practice shamanism, witchcraft. A little insight into the world of politics. Because that's what it takes to wield the kind of power they wield. You must participate. And if you want to lead, you've got to be a leader forcing the participation. Now, the Illuminati are using their most highly ranked couple to forward what's known as the Great Work, forming the New World Order. Using chaos to change things is how it's being achieved. First to heat up the earth and then hammer the whole world and reshape it as one. We're going through the heat and just getting red hot now. Soon it will get white hot. Just listen to J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. And by the way, there will be the final Lord of the Rings movie to brainwash you coming out very soon. 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky. 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone. 9 for mortal men doomed to die. 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne. In the land of Mordor where the shadows lie, 1 ring to rule them all. 1 ring to find them. 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, in the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie. J.R.R. Tolkien's epigraph to the Lord of the Rings says it all. That's witchcraft at its highest level. All of what I've just capsulated and went down at the beginning of this week, that included Tuesday and Wednesday, included in that 11 fest, as I'm now prone to call it, there was this. The video, Innocence of Islam, that is being to blame for all of the violence spreading throughout the Middle East like a brush fire, now may not be to blame for the death of the U.S. ambassador and all the violence that followed, but many now believe it was a planned 9/11 anniversary attack by Al-Qaeda. Yes, those jihadists who couldn't wait to take responsibility for bringing down the World Trade Center towers, who were so clever as to successfully hijack 3 commercial aircraft with just box cutters, and who were so skillful as to bring down the world's tallest buildings in the very heart of New York City and collapse them in their own footprint, a la a demolition, not once, but twice. But now, on the 11th anniversary of the attack stage, another 9/11 attack, as an anniversary attack, as some have already called it, are now hiding behind some video and allowing it to take all the credit for their skillful endeavor. So where are the jihadists going, we did it, we got the ambassador, we started all of this? Where are they? Are they hiding behind Sam Bessiel's video? Space back with more on AVFS Talk Radio AM 640 in a moment. It's Spaceman. Talk Radio, AM 640 AVFS. Emails to space at 640toronto.com or spaceman 640toronto.com. So, if you simply check recent history, you see that there are 2 past events that originally were intended by the Illuminati to begin and perpetuate this whole war on terror, as it's called, designed to later evolve into the 21st and final crusade, or World War III, if you want to call it that. Do you remember offhand the 2 past events I'm referring to? There are 2 past events that originally were intended to begin this whole war on terror and ramp it up big time. The first is the Danish cartoons, printed in a Danish newspaper, that began with 12, the royal number, editorial cartoons, just 12 of them, most of which depicted the Islamic prophet Muhammad. They were published in the Danish newspaper Jyllands-Posten on September 30th. Yes, the royal number of 3. 2005. Spiritual number 7. Putting them all together, 2005 and 30 is 10. Law, Islamic law, the rule of law, religious law. The newspaper that referred to itself as Denmark's international newspaper announced that this publication was an attempt to contribute to the debate regarding criticism of Islam and self-censorship. You see, in Denmark, by 2025, it's very possible that Denmark could have a population that would be over 51% Muslim. And they have been allowing people to immigrate to Denmark in droves in the past few years. Now to the point where it's getting very close to having a majority in the country, which, of course, you know what that might lead to, and what they're trying to say might lead to. The Illuminati, who control both sides of the fight, and who control all, that is all, major organized religions and religious groups, but not the people. They don't control the people. They control the people who control the people. The imams, caliphates, the preachers, the priests, the cardinals, the pope. You don't need to control the people when you control those. Yes, the newspaper that refers to itself as Denmark's international newspaper announces it's just contributing to a debate with this criticism of Islam and self-censorship that's getting quite big in Denmark. The Illuminati, who control both sides, as I said, responded by organizing through their control of the imams in the mosques, who then control the people, and the public protests were formed. And they're always on Fridays, if you'll notice. This past Friday, for instance, all of the spread of violence because of this supposed Innocence of Islam trailer was done on Friday. Why Friday? It's a day of rest in all Islamic countries. It's their Sunday. It's a non-working day. They all go to mosques in the morning, where the imam will go, today we're out to protest, and we're all going. So they all go, and the BBC is there to take the photographs, get the pictures of all these people marching to wherever it is that they're supposed to go to. And of course you have the little groups within that group that infiltrate it as they're going and moving along, who are the provocateurs, the ones that will cause the violence. Then the police will come and shoot at them. Tear gas will be dispersed, and of course you have the pictures that you see shot around the world. And it looks like, wow, these people are really upset at this cartoon in 2005 and this video in 2012. You see, that's how it's really done. So when, and I have to tell you, in 2005, there was no YouTube. Actually, I'm incorrect. YouTube was created in February of 2005, but had just gotten going and no one knew about it. It was put on the internet by a couple of ex-PayPal executives. Google now owns it. But there was no YouTube, really, to speak of that everyone would flock to. Hey, it went viral on YouTube. People in 2005, when the cartoons were released, were going, what the hell's YouTube? So, you see, this is why newspapers had to be used. It was the way to get it viral, supposed viral. So, Jyllands-Posten in Denmark was chosen to do 12 cartoons lampooning the Muslims' highest religious figure. Jyllands-Posten just became an agent provocateur, stirring it up to get the desired reaction, to make the change with the escalation of violence. And it didn't really take off. Never really got off the ground. So further examples of the cartoons were soon reprinted in newspapers in more than 50 other countries, further deepening the controversy, spreading it around. People are getting to know about it now. 4 full months later, Muslims finally incited to protest across the Islamic world. In other words, the word to go was given in the organized way I explained just a few moments ago. Then, with this action of the agent provocateurs and the police beginning the tear gases and pushing these provocateurs, and not shooting the provocateurs, shooting innocent people that were just along, that were told by their imam at the mosque to get down there, resulted in a total of more than 100 reported deaths, including the bombing of the Danish embassy in Pakistan, setting fire to the Danish embassies in Syria, Lebanon, Iran, as it stormed the European buildings, and burning the Danish, Dutch, Norwegian, French, and German flags in Gaza City. A bunch of groups, various groups, mostly in the Western world, responded by endorsing the Danish policies. Buy Danish! Those campaigns and other displays of support started to pop up in the Western world. Danish Prime Minister, then Anders Fogh Rasmussen, who became the NATO leader after he quit that job, described the controversy as Denmark's worst international crisis since World War II. They drew the battle lines very well. Then everyone and everybody died down after it was over. People forgot about it. And it went away. So the Illuminati had to remind everyone of their coveted goal of this ideological war, so it was reborn, sort of, in this latest incarnation of the same old trick, inciting a crowd to action. And there was what's called an echo of this heavily relied upon event, the Danish cartoons, to foment hatred between the three monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So how do you bring back the Muhammad cartoons, you ask? To heat up the coming ideological war? Well, here's how. You arrest and charge some men who planned an attack on the Danish newspaper Jyllands-Posten. Years later, in 2010, December 30th, police in Denmark and Sweden arrest men, allegedly, who were planning an attack on the Danish newspaper Jyllands-Posten. I guess they were the only two guys in the world that didn't forget. Happened in 2005. It took them until 2010 to plan it. November 15th, 2011, the story breaks. 3 men accused of plotting a bomb in the offices of Denmark's Jyllands-Posten newspaper. The newspaper that printed the Danish cartoons was going to be bombed. Plead guilty. Or, I'm sorry, not guilty on opening day, which was November 15, 2011. Then, this story convicts the Danish court. The Danish court convicts this Somali man on even bigger charge, a murder. February 3rd, 2011, the headline read, attempted manslaughter of Kurt Vestergaard. January 30th, 2012, this year, investigators say plot to strike Jyllands-Posten, which printed cartoons of Prophet Muhammad, was linked to Al-Qaeda. April 13th, 2012, another headline, 4 Swedes accused of terrorism over alleged plot for revenge against newspaper Jyllands-Posten that printed caricatures of Prophet Muhammad. June 4th, 2012 is the last one that I've heard about that I could find. 3 Swedish citizens and a Tunisian planned to attack Jyllands-Posten offices in revenge for Muhammad cartoons. That's June 4th, this year. So you see how they tried to foment. It was forced to get some reaction, desired reaction. Now, the second event, I referred to two events, remember. The second event, when I return on AVFS, Talk Radio AM 640. I'm Space, back after the break. I'm the guy to call Space. It's View from Space, Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. I said there were two events. The first event, of course, the Danish cartoons at Jallan's Posten. Now, the second event I referred to is the October surprise. Remember that? It also happened in an election year in the U.S., just as it is now. It involved the United States Embassy, just as it did this week, and was during the stretch run while both presidential hopefuls were on the campaign trail. That's also being repeated right now, this week. It was just a few weeks away from the vote. That's why it was called the October surprise, because it was happening, culminating in the month of October. As you know, or may not know, all American elections are held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. I've already spoken to you about Tuesday. That's why it's never a Monday. It has occult connections the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. That's their fixed date, which really isn't fixed at all, but it's fixed in the occult, in the rituals in the occult. So it was called the October surprise because it was happening, culminating in the month of October. It also, as it does on this latest Illuminati event, also involved the making of one presidential hopeful look good and the other presidential hopeful look bad. Only one thing's different here. On the original October surprise, the recipients were the Republicans of the good, and the Democrats, the bad. This time it's reversed. Incredible, isn't it? Because you see, it doesn't really matter, Republican, Democrat, it's all the same. They're both controlled by that third party. There's nothing new under the sun. It's simply history repeating itself. Or should I maybe revise that to say it's only the Illuminati making history repeat itself? The October surprise and the Libya surprise, I'm going to call it. More on that in a minute. Now, all countries are aware, all countries, that the U.S. has been printing absurd amounts of money of their fiat currency. Fiat, meaning not fixed to anything of value. The value fluctuates. That's why you have to check on how much the money is worth daily, because the Illuminati tell you how much it's worth every day. Used to be on a gold standard, where it was measured by ounces of gold. And if you had printed $100 million of banknotes, you would have to have $100 million of gold. No longer so. It's air money, made out of the thin air. Fiat money, as it's called. Not connected to anything. worth however much people will pay for it. In other words, set for manipulation. This absurd amount of money, this fiat currency being printed by the U.S., many of these countries are no longer willing to hold reserves and continue to buy American dollars as it continues to devalue, because the more you print, the more it devalues. This devaluing has become accelerated since the U.S. Federal Reserve has discontinued even to publish the M3 monetary aggregate. The M numbers, 13th letter of the alphabet, M1, M2, and M3 as they're called, are components of the United States money supply, which show the amount of dollars in circulation. M3 refers to the total supply of U.S. dollars in existence, virtual and physical, and they no longer report that, and haven't since March of 2006. You can't find this out. In other words, you can't find out how much U.S. money is in existence, physical or virtual, in the world right now today. Okay, guys, let's count everybody's American dollars and see how much there is printed in the world. You can't find that number anywhere. They won't tell you how much it is because it is astronomical and would scare the Jesus out of you. You would go, oh my God. Not knowing how much money the banks are printing means that there is no longer an accurate indication of how much currency is in circulation. This basically means that you're playing with monopoly money, with people who can take money out of the bank anytime they want because they are the bank. This should be raising alarm bells across the United States in a way it has done across the world, but it isn't, as the dumping of the U.S. dollar by most countries is starting to indicate. After all, why would anyone want to hold on to a currency that has lost more than 67% in 5 years relative to its peers? It's as compared to other currencies. This is the one main reason why, listen to me carefully, this is one of the main reasons why Iran and other OPEC countries have been so adamant on switching from the U.S. dollar to other currencies. This is why this week the Federal Reserve Chairman, Ben Bernanke, has started the printing presses again, this time to the tune of $40 billion a month till further notice. It's the very first time that a quantitative easing, as it's now called, has not had a time limit where it ends. Obama's second term is going to be just god-awful. His debt is going to be so high when it is America's turn to service their debt. And I believe that time comes sometime next March 2013. The government will be forced to shut down because Barack Obama is going to ask for a debt ceiling raise and be denied. Do you know who the United States chairman of that committee is? The running mate of Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan. He's the budget chief, the House budget chief. Obama's going to have to ask him for a debt ceiling increase. They will vote on it, and they will vote no. To which Obama can only do one thing. He runs out of money. He shuts down the government. I mean, all of this is just symbolic because really, things will still happen. But America will be told they have to service the debt. Austerity comes. The government, in symbolic fashion, will be shut down for a time. I believe that's sometime in March. And it's all going to come back to bite Barack Obama. The Chinese will very soon be buying Euro bonds instead of American bonds. Angela Merkel has just returned from her China trip that closed that deal. That's what she was doing over there. Just after the European Union said they were going to give absolute power to their European Central Bank to control all 17 Eurozone countries that use the euro, to be controlled by them, one central bank, the ECB, and Germany will have a veto on any amount given out to each country on loan. No, that's too much, the Germans could say, for you. Spain has come out and said emphatically no to any outside control, and they are in a deep debt and use the euro. Spain's money is the Vatican money. The Pope, as an aside, is also on the move this week and is in Lebanon doing business, which I find very intriguing. Now, the United States now finds itself between a rock and a hard place because they will either need to invade, bomb, or enforce sanctions against Iran, along with any other OPEC countries that decides to stop using American dollars. Or they will have to watch the complete collapse of their economy and the devaluing of the Federal Reserve currency known as the U.S. dollar, which is already beginning to happen. Now, for a time, this new stimulus of $40 billion per month will give a fake buoyancy to this election period, making Barack Obama the better choice. He'll be the guy. This election, like all others, is rigged. Elections are held merely to give the appearance of a democracy, but it's not that at all. It's corporate fascism, plain and simple. Corporations call the shots, who are controlled by the Illuminati, so they actually call the shots. But for now, on the face, it's corporate fascism, soon to change to fascism, then to a dictatorship with the one world government after the smoke clears. Say VFS on Talk Radio, AM 640. I'm Space, returning in a moment. I'm the guy they call Space. This is View from Space. Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails. The only way I communicate, by the way, is space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. If you've got a comment on tonight's show or if you got some information you'd like to pass along, you can use those two addresses, or if you just want to say hi. I'm checking in. Now, as I said before the break, the U.S. printing $40 billion per month until further notice. There is no end. It has an open end, no time limit. And this is basically just to drive the debt deeper and deeper so that it's impossible ever to pay it back, so they can just kill the currency. The North American Union will be formed after that. Canada, the United States, and Mexico in one region economically, just as the European Union has done years ago. This will happen all over the world. That's what the Arab Spring was all about, taking out dictatorship and putting in new leaders that are going to be regionally combined. The dictators were not killed, by the way. They were just taken away, removed, and retired. They work for the Illuminati. It's time to take away the dictator and put in the complicit president or prime minister of that country. And the Arab Spring, all of that North American or North African area of Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, Yemen, Sudan, Morocco, are all going to be one region. There will be 10 in all who will report to the 11th, who will be the Antichrist. That's how Atlantis was set up. 10 regions, each with one king, or one leader, that reported to the highest leader, who ruled all. The one ring to rule all. So we're now going through the changes and readying the world for that through, just as the blacksmith has always done, heated, hammered, and formed. We're being formed the same exact way. The heat, you understand, is the violence and conflagration. The hammering is the changes. The finished product is not yet finished, but will be a one-world government. Now we're working under corporate fascism. Now you can understand why this escalation between Israel, the United States, and Iran is soon reaching its climax. When a country goes broke, check history, it always mobilizes. The two Illuminati-controlled players, America, Iran, have had a history of partnership, in business. And yes, collapsing an empire is big business. Let me review some past business history between Iran and the United States of America. You recall, of course, it was the CIA who set up the Shah of Iran. Well, they also orchestrated his fall and orchestrated the Iranian Revolution and set up the new regime to be the antagonists of America instead of the friend, as the Shah of Iran was. The Iran hostage crisis, the October surprise, is being repeated now. Sort of. I'll call it the Libyan surprise. Remember the original one? The October surprise? It was between Iran and the United States, where 52, yes, that's a 7 in numerology, the number of spiritual. Because it was spiritual. 52 was spiritual because of the religions. One permissive and really promiscuous, Christianity of America, and the very straight-laced, strict Islamic religion. That's why 52, the 7, was invoked. In 52, U.S. diplomats held hostage for how long? 444 days. Remember the number 4, the foundation? Remember the magnification of 3, the highest possible magnification to get a spell cast with its most productivity, 444 days it took. From November 4th, yes, 4th of November, 1979, to January 20th of 1981. That's how long it lasted. The October surprise. After a group of Islamic students, just Islamic students, took over the American embassy in Tehran, just those students walked in there and just snatched those 52 away with all those Marines standing around looking, I guess. I don't know how that happened. But the Islamic students took over the American embassy in Tehran in the name of the Iranian Revolution. It was a diplomatic crisis coming to a head and was called the October Surprise. A deal was made between the high-level Reagan campaign operatives, meaning the Illuminati, using the ancient business connections between Skull and Bones Secret Society and Iran, and representatives of the Iranian Islamic government to delay the release of the hostages until after the November 80 U.S. elections. 1980, November. First Tuesday after first Monday, November 1980. The U.S. election was held. They delayed until then. The delay made the then President, Democrat Jimmy Carter, Obama's party, look very bad. Because the hostage-taking occurred on his watch, and Jimmy Carter put a lot of effort into trying to get the hostages released. He was a professed Christian, by the way. After Iran rejected all of his demands, Carter approved an ill-fated, sabotaged secret rescue mission dubbed Operation Eagle Claw. It was a United States military operation to rescue the American hostages held captive in the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, Iran, on November 24th, 1980. I'll conclude the story of the October Surprise and the rescue mission dubbed Operation Eagle Claw by President Jimmy Carter right after the break on AVFS Talk Radio AM 640. I'm the guy to call Space. It's View from Space. Talk Radio AM 640. This is AVFS. I was just about to describe Operation Eagle Claw. Jimmy Carter in deep. Election coming up. Still 52 hostages in Tehran, Iran, being held by students who stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took 52 hostages. Business connections of the Republican Reagan campaign arranged for that crisis to drag on for 444 days. Carter getting anxious, April 24th, 1980. Only 7 months to go till his election. Needs to get them out. It happened on his watch. It was the United States military operation, Eagle Claw, that was supposed to rescue those American hostages held captive and get them out. Late in the afternoon of April 24th, 1980, 8 RH-53 choppers flew from the aircraft carrier USS Nimitz toward a remote landing site, really just a desert road, serving as an airstrip in the Great Salt Desert Dashikavir, near the city of Tabas. Early the next morning, 6 of the 8 RH-53D choppers met up with several waiting C-130 Hercules transport and refueling aircraft at the landing site and refueling area designated Desert 1 by the mission. 2 of the choppers didn't make it to Desert 1. One had avionics failures en route and returned to the USS Nimitz. The other had an indication that one of its main rotor blades was fractured and was abandoned in the desert en route. The choppers maintained strict radio silence under orders for the entire flight, a problem which impacted their ability to maintain a cohesive flying unit while en route, as they all arrived separately and behind schedule. The strict radio silence also prevented them from requesting permission to fly above a sandstorm that was there, as the C-130s had done, and they flew the entire route at hazardous low levels also, even while inside the sandstorm and with limited field of vision and erratic instrumentation. Now, the mission plan called for a minimum of 6 choppers, but of that 6 that made it to Desert 1, the rendezvous point, near Tehran, one had a failed primary hydraulic system and had flown on the second hydraulic system for the previous 4 hours. Choppers have 2 hydraulic systems. If one fails, the other one kicks in. Well, this one had the secondary hydraulic system kicked in, and it had been running for over 4 hours. The failed chopper's crew wanted to continue, but because of the increased risk, it said, of not having a backup hydraulic system during flight, the chopper squadron's commander decided to ground it. Delta Commander Colonel Beckwith then recommended the mission be aborted, and his recommendation was approved by President Jimmy Carter on the phone. As the choppers repositioned themselves for refueling, one helicopter even landed on top of a C-130 tanker aircraft and crashed, killing 8 Americans and injuring several more. You talk about a botched job, a sabotage. The main cause for suspicion was the absolutely astounding coincidence of Ronald Reagan's inauguration and the hostages being released a mere 6 minutes after Reagan was sworn into office. George Herbert Walker Bush was the vice president of Ronald Reagan, adding more fuel to the suspicion that this was a business deal that was put together by the Illuminati for Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush. There was also their later decision to provide arms to the anti-U.S. Iranian government, allegedly in return for not freeing the hostages, but for delaying their release until Reagan and Bush took office. Because if you'll recall history, you watch Ronald Reagan being sworn in as President of the United States of America, and a mere 6 minutes later they break into the ceremony and go, "The hostages have just been released in Tehran." The October surprise. George Herbert Walker, Ronald Reagan's running mate, was the head of the CIA before he took that job. Even special ops personnel involved in the prep for the second rescue attempt, believing that incoming presidential nominee Ronald Reagan was involved in the planning and timing of it, and that these intentions were either implied or made known to the de facto Iranian government, leading to the hostages' release just minutes after Ronald Reagan's swearing-in ceremony at his inauguration. Very few people are aware of this fact, but one of those Iranian students who stormed the U.S. embassy in Tehran, who took the 52 Americans hostage, his name was Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. One of the students is now the president of Iran, controlled by the Muslim clerics, who are in turn controlled by the Illuminati. By the way, there was a Canadian connection in all of this rescue effort. I say was because it's being erased by a Hollywood movie. More on that in a minute. On the day the hostages were seized, 6 American diplomats evaded capture and remained in hiding at the Swiss and Canadian embassies. In 1979, the Canadian Parliament, on the recommendation of the Prime Minister of Canada, the then Joe Clark, held a secret session for the first time since World War II in order to pass special legislation allowing Canadian passports to be issued to some American citizens. Canadian passports issued to some American citizens so that they could escape. 6 American diplomats boarded a flight to Zurich, Switzerland, on January 28, 1980. Their escape and rescue from Iran by Canadian Ambassador Ken Taylor came to be known as the Canadian Caper. Ken Taylor, as it turns out, was actually a CIA operative. What else would he be? This close to the epicenter of a critical Illuminati event that really pitted the United States against Iran for the first time originally. That is ever in front of the public. Behind closed doors, these people are business partners, both desiring the same goal, the completion of the great work. The New World Order. Now this week, Ben Affleck's movie called Argo is showing at the Toronto International Film Festival. Toronto is where A View from Space on Talk Radio AM 640 emanates from weekly. Its focus is on this very movie that has all the talk shows buzzing in Canada. In the movie, typical of Hollywood movies, the Canadian part in the October surprise was totally negated. Left out, dropped, chopped, hit the cutting floor. Well, it was never really in the script. The original story was rewritten by Hollywood screenwriters, and many Canadians want the world to know it was they who aided and paved the way to spirit out the American hostages out of Tehran. But you know what? It wasn't Canada. It wasn't Ken Taylor. It wasn't the U.S. It was the Illuminati that arranged the supposed safe return in that event, known as the October surprise. Interesting, isn't it? That's why Hollywood can change it. Because no one really had any clue of what or who was going to control it or what was going down. But when you stand back, and now we have very good view from the Monday morning quarterback chair, you can see that was all a setup. Just as this whole Libya surprise a video purporting to be a trailer for a movie that doesn't exist, showing the Prophet Muhammad in a completely outrageous, grotesque way as the cause of all the violence that's spreading through the Middle East at the moment. No, it's not that at all. This is the Libya surprise, is now the newest Jyllands-Posten Muhammad cartoons revisited. Only newspapers aren't used now. They're thrown out because they're not needed any longer. It's YouTube. Space back with more on Talk Radio AM 640. This is AVFS. Back on the other side. Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640. You can email me at spaceman@640toronto.com or simply space@640toronto.com. This is Talk Radio AM 640. The goal of the New World Order is for the large corporations and the wealthy to totally control the world's population, resources, communications, finances, trade, and labor. I guess that'd be you and I. This involves manipulating economies, politics, society, and religion on a global level. That's where this show, AVFS, operates, on a global level. Emails come from many countries around the world. People are catching on. So, I want to just give you an insight as to how these people operate and do and are very close to completing what I just said, which was a mouthful. Here's how it all began, with some background on the source of this latest assault. This Innocence of Islam video, which was exactly the same as the Danish cartoons. Only forget newspaper, the newspaper becomes YouTube. That was the latest attempt to further this goal. The original one that set the blueprint were the drawings published by Jyllands-Posten, now known around the world as simply the cartoons. So let me start at the beginning to show you how this has gotten as global as it has. And believe me, when I say global, because it was intended to and orchestrated to get that way. The cartoons. First, a little background on the newspaper itself and some of its history. Jyllands-Posten. The Jutland Post in English. Full name, Morgenavisen Jyllands-Posten, is Denmark's largest selling daily newspaper. A common smear name for this paper is Morgenfascisten Jyllands-Posten, the morning fascist, the Jutland plague. A little humor. It's based in Viby, a suburb of Aarhus, and has a weekday circulation of approximately 150,000 copies. Viby is a suburb of the southwestern part of Aarhus. The J stands for Jutland, as there is another town called Viby on the island of Zealand called Viby SJ. It's pretty much a working class area, although a lot of immigrants live in VBJ as well. Those immigrants, mostly Muslim. At the time of the Viking Age and early Middle Ages, there was a castle in Viby, Aarhus, also commonly known by its Danish spelling Aarhus, Arhus. It's the second largest city in Denmark. It's the principal port in the east coast of Jutland. In medieval times, this city was called Arus, A-R-U-S. In Icelandic chronicles, it was known as Aros. It was a compound of the two words ar, a genitive of a, meaning river, and modern Danish, a, or os, meaning mouth. Obsolete now in modern Danish, but in modern Icelandic, this word is still used for river delta. The city is located on the mouth of the small river Aarhus. The oldest archaeological findings in Aarhus are glass pearls, which date to the end of the 7th century, half-buried long houses used both as homes and workshops for the Vikings, have also been dug up there. In 1922, the newspaper expressed its admiration for Benito Mussolini, the dictator of Italy, Second World War, sided with Hitler, who had just taken office. The paper wrote this about him: this very strong man that Mussolini absolutely is exactly what the misruled Italian people need. In 1933, the newspaper advocated that Denmark follow Germany's example and replace petty party politics with the stability of an authoritarian regime. An editorial was even published on May 17, 1933, and it stated that democratic rule by the people, as we know it, is a luxury which can be afforded in good times when the economy is favorable, but restoring the economy after many years of lavish spending requires a firm hand. The paper considered the German Weimar Republic to be a failure because of its lack of stability. That's all. Just unstable. Flemming Rose is a Danish journalist, author, and the cultural editor of the Danish newspaper Jyllands-Posten. He was responsible for the first publishing of the cartoons in the Muhammad cartoon crisis. Now, who knows where he is? You see, he immediately, after publishing the cartoons, went on indefinite leave from his newspaper after a controversial offer to reprint Iranian cartoons of the Jewish Holocaust. He actually offered to reprint Iranian cartoons because he said his reasoning for the Danish cartoons in his newspaper was that he was just fueling debate for the situation that was growing in Denmark between Islam and the government and the population. So the Islamic leaders called for, well, we want jokes about the Jewish Holocaust then. You put them in, so tit for tat. If you can laugh at us, you can laugh at them. And that's when our man, Flemming Rose, the Danish journalist, author, and cultural editor at that Danish newspaper, the Jyllands-Posten, went on indefinite leave. See how carefully they look after their people? After Mr. Rose hadn't been removed after all, because he was the cause of the global phenomenon known as the cartoons, but because he offered to reprint Iranian cartoons depicting the non-existence of the Holocaust. Fleming Rose had a major in Russian language and literature from the University of Copenhagen. From 1990 to 96, he was the Moscow correspondent for the newspaper Berlingske Tidende. Between 96 and 99, he was the correspondent for the same newspaper in Washington, D.C. In 1999, he became Moscow's correspondent for the newspaper Yalins-Posten, and January 05, the cultural editor of that paper. He's a disciple of Daniel Pipes. Know who he is? Danny Pipes works for the organization called the Project for a New Century, American Century. This group came up with the idea of how to start a global war against the Muslim world. Daniel Pipes is part of the Bolton Fief Wolfowitz invasion. That crowd. This is the bunch that helped shape the intelligence just before the Iraq War. Then known as the Gulf War. Then the idea, that's the first World War the first Gulf War with George Herbert Walker Bush leading the charge. Then his son come aboard to lead the second charge. The idea was to demonize Islam as a religion and Muslims as a people. Pipes is the man whom CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, claims many Muslims consider the most virulent Islamophobe in America. Fleming Rose traveled to Philly in October of 04 to visit Daniel Pipes. This is where the idea was kicked around. This is how to start a global war on the Muslim world. April 2003, President George W. Bush nominated the rabid anti-Muslim Pipes to the board of the United States Institute of Peace and congressionally sponsored think tank. Here's some of his other works. Maud Stroman, Against the Stream, in Russian by Boris Yeltsin, translated by Fleming Rose to Danish. Schoenberg, 1990. Boris Yeltsin is another Illuminati member of the Russian Masonry organization. Remember, Fleming Rose has a large Russian background. It all fits together if you look. But who has the time to look these days, you say? Me. Katastrophen. Der Uderblev. The disaster that did not happen. Liedendahl, 1998. It's another one of his books. The Collapse of Social Democracy, co-authored with several others, was also published in 2005, just before the cartoons. And the cartoons were published in Jyllands-Posten in late September of 2005. Approximately a couple of weeks later, nearly 3,500 people demonstrate peacefully in Copenhagen. In November, several European newspapers republished those images, triggering more protests. More on how you foment an ideological war. Next on A View from Space, Talk Radio AM 640. Back after the break. I'm the guy that calls Space. It's A View from Space on Talk Radio AM 640. You can email me, space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. I'm talking about the Jyllands-Posten Muhammad cartoons. If you've just tuned in, because I want to show you that it is exactly the same move, that it was the original of this new Innocence of Islam trailer of which there is no movie to, that's just been released on YouTube, that everyone is having a laugh over, except the Muslim world, because they're the brunt of the laughter. And I'm showing you how this is actually intended to foment an ideological war, to cause one, to cause a rift between Jews, Christians, and the Islamic world. Because the ideological war is going to be the 21st and final crusade, also known as World War III, which will give way to the one world government when the smoke clears. Now, the cartoons were first published by Jyllands-Posten in late September '05. Approximately a couple of weeks later, near 3,500 people demonstrate peacefully in Copenhagen. November of that year, a couple of months later, several European newspapers have to republish the images to trigger protests because it died. No one was really that upset. Then labor strikes began in Pakistan the following month, and several organizations criticized the Danish government. More protests occur January '06. Later that month, a boycott of Danish goods begins. Several countries withdraw their ambassadors to Denmark. Notice it's all done from the very top. Boycotts of goods. Ambassadors withdrawn. The protests get more and more, just as they are now building after the Innocence of Islam trailer. They continued in Damascus, Syria. Both the Norwegian embassy and a building containing the Danish, Swedish, and Chilean embassies were stormed and set on fire by protesters. It's going on again today. This was, bring you up to date, it was Khartoum in the Sudan, where the British and German embassies were attacked and fire broke out. In Beirut, thousands of people were protesting in the streets, and the Danish General Consulate was stormed and set on fire. By February of '06, at least 29 people had been killed in the protests. When you first researched the story, you discovered that cartoons were shopped around the Middle East by Illuminati-controlled Islamic clerics from Denmark for months after they appeared. And that when they didn't get the desired response, then they commissioned even more derogatory cartoons to ensure the proper level of outrage. Then you find that they were told to wait until after the Palestinian and Egyptian elections. Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood Party of Egypt wanted to present a calmer image to the electorate. Finally, the Illuminati-controlled media linked the most spectacularly violent demonstrations to be controlled by Syria and Iran. Two members of the axis of evil, right? This starts happening exactly at the very same time as Iran's being referred to in the UN Security Council for their enrichment of uranium. The Danish Muslim delegation showed much more than the 12 cartoons published by Jyllands-Posten. In a booklet it presented during its tour of the Middle East, the delegation including other cartoons of Muhammad that were highly offensive. They're shopping them, including one where the prophet had a pig face, but these additional pictures were not published by the newspaper, but were completely fabricated by the delegation and inserted into their booklet. They were phony. They weren't even cartoons. They made them up themselves. Has it all happened innocuously and accidentally, or was it a deliberate attempt towards an ulterior motive? Well, to answer the question, you need to look back a little. Back in time to May of '05, to a meeting of the high priests of globalization. Only 4 months before the crisis began, between May 5 and May 8 of '05, a group of powerful men from today's finance, industrial, and political worlds huddled together in the warm and cozy rooms of the 5-star Dorient Sofitel Sea Hotel in Ergun, Upper Bavaria. Outside the hotel, private and state guards patrolled with automatic weapons and sniffer dogs. This secretive cabal of powerful men who answer to no one, otherwise go by the name of the Bilderberg Group. A simple Google query will bring up thousands of results. The Bilderberg Group is the only private international organization that Time magazine rated 10 for secrecy on a rate scale of 1 to 10. 10, of course, being the most secret. So what do the defamatory cartoons have to do with the Bilderbergs? And this, I'm sure, Innocence of Islam video? Well, let's first have a look at the names of just some of the attendees of that meeting in Upper Bavaria. Joseph Ackermann, Chairman Group of the Executive Committee of the Deutsche Bank, Germany, was there. Joachim Ammann was there, the European Commissioner. Jose Barroso, the European Union Commission President. Franco Bernabe, Vice Chairman at Rothschild Europe. Martin Feldstein, President and CEO of National Bureau of Economic Research, USA. Willie Ford Jr., Chairman and CEO of the Ford Company, then in '05. One of the Ford boys. Tim Geithner. Ooh. Now the Secretary of the Treasury, was the President of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York then. Donnie Graham, Chairman, CEO of the Washington Post, where most of the Washington leaks come from. Donnie Graham, as I say, Washington Post. Richard Haas, President of the Council of Foreign Relations, then in '05. Jaap Hoop de Scheffer, then Secretary General of NATO. Now it's Rasmussen, the former Prime Minister of Denmark. Willie Hubbard, Assistant to the President for Economic Policy and Director of the National Economic Council, USA. Johnny Keane, President of GSI, General, U.S. Army, retired. Henry Kissinger, Chairman of Kissinger Associates. American Enterprise Institute, Michael Ledeen was there. Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands was there. Richard Pearl, Resident Fellow, American Enterprise Institute for Public Policy and Research. His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Belgium. Norman Pearlstein, Editor-in-Chief of Time USA. Then. Her Majesty the Queen of Spain. I mean, the list goes on. Also, by the way, the owners of Jyllands-Posten were there. Peter Sutherland, chairman of Goldman Sachs International, then, was there. And, of course, there were the usual prime ministers and U.S. government officials. Also present were the movers and shakers of the Western media, including media heads from almost all the countries whose press chose to publish the insulting cartoons. People like Michael Ledeen of the American Enterprise Institute, that's one of the leading architects of the Bush administration's foreign policy. Also on the list of attendees was Anders Eldrup from Denmark. Anders Eldrup, sometimes spelled as Eldrop, happens to be married to one Merete Eldrup. This lady is the managing director of the company JP Politikens Hus. JP for Jyllands-Posten, the one newspaper that published the slanderous anti-Islamic cartoons in Denmark. So you see, quite a list of who's who. And Anders Eldrup, her illustrious husband, is right now chairman of Denmark's oil and natural gas company, DONG, and was the permanent secretary, minister of Danish finance. Also has attended the last 5 Bilderberger meetings. And you find this very interesting, too. Our previous editor-in-chief of Politiken, another Jyllands-Posten Politikens Hus newspapers, Torger Seidenfaten, is a long-time Bilderberger member, too. But the truth is, the sole aim of this group is to put in place the New World Order for the express benefit of only the elites. Space returning after the break on Talk Radio AM 640. This is AVFS. AVFS is back. I'm the spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. Emails to space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. Denmark. Takes its name from the tribe of Dana, Tuatha Danann. The tribe of Dana were descendants of Dana. Dana is another way of pronouncing the Hebrew word Dan. They are the 13th tribe, the tribe that was kicked out, the tribe of Cain. The Aryan past is spectacular in the tribe of Dan. They were the Sumerians who originated pictographs and writing. And that's why they were the ones chosen to foist this very first shot to foment this ideological war between the Judeos, Christian, and Islamic worlds. They were the ancient Armenians. They were the ancient Atlanteans who followed the law of one. They built Arkham in Russia, the ancient Aryan capital of the world with an astronomy site in line with Stonehenge. They built the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. They were the original inhabitants of ancient Egypt, as the earliest frescoes and statues depict blue-eyed people, Aryan race. Menes, the son of the Assyrian king Sargon the Great, was Egypt's first king. They were the Egyptian Melchizedek. And that priesthood with Horus, the hawk. They built the Great Pyramid of Giza in mathematics, which tells a story of whoever will open their eyes to it. Satanic numerology. This was intended as an altar to their god, who is man. The Great Pyramid was replete with a little passageway on its inside. A timeline. going from the descending chamber to the ascending chamber at 33 A.D. The three pyramids were built in alignment with the stars of Orion's belt. Orion being the constellation of the Antichrist, where the supposed watchers watch and wait to come to Earth as aliens. The Egyptian Sphinx is theirs. So is the South American Mayan temple and stone masonry found around the world. They were the blue-eyed Medes Persians, the originals of present-day Iran. The name taken from Aryan, Iran, meaning noble. They were the Indo-Aryan Persians who set up a high culture in India. They were the Greek Danoi, and the Spartans, who were descendants of Abraham. They were the Greeks who founded ancient Byzantium. They were the Greek Alexander the Great, who conquered more territory in his short lifespan than any other conqueror that followed, becoming the richest man in personal wealth to this day to have ever lived, even more than the Jewish Rothschilds and Rockefellers. Their Alexander was the conqueror who was initiated into the ancient rites of Osiris in Egypt, who contributed Greek culture borrowed from Egypt, who married Princess Roxana of Samarkand, and who commissioned a library to be built at Alexandria. They were the Ptolemies who built that library. They were the philosophers Plato and Aristotle. They were the Greek Cleopatra who gave her life for her people, as they say. They were the Russian Etruscans and the later Romans who contributed Roman culture to the world. They were the Holy Roman Empire and the builders of the 1,000-year-old Orthodox Christian Byzantine Empire. They were in Asia first and established a great civilization there. In China they developed gunpowder. Their European brothers who came later developed a trade route with China because their ancestors were found buried there. Hungarians, Serbs, Goths, Cossacks from the Don River, Turks, Swedes, Macedonians, Czechs, Scots, and Bulgarians. They were the Phoenicians who ruled the seas. They were the Phoenician Hebrews that settled in Britain. The tribe of Dan were the Phoenician British. They ruled the seas again and supplied the materials to build Solomon's temple. They were Isaac's sons. That's why the term Saxons. Prince William's real last name is Saxe Coburg Goth. The tribe of Dan were those known to the Romans in Britain as Germans, from the Latin Germanus, meaning genuine. They were the British who later absorbed the Israelite tribe of Ephraim. The tribe of Dan also were the Israelites of old, who, after Assyrian captivity, as recorded in Esdras 13, landed in Arsareth, present-day Germany. They were known as the Scythians, or Latin Germanus, for genuine, as in the germ or core of wheat. They were the blonde, blue-eyed tall Nordics of the Israelite tribe of Naphtali that are buried in thousands of tombs in present-day Russia. They were from the Israelite tribe of Dan, who named the Danube River in Denmark, settled in Ireland and named Dunkirk, and other Irish places after Dan. They were the prophet Jeremiah from the tribe of Levi, who went to Ireland and who's buried there. Ireland is partly called the Emerald Island, named after Levi's emerald gemstone. They were Scota, King Zedekiah's daughter, who traveled with Jeremiah. Scotland is named after Scota. They were the Vikings of the tribe of Benjamin that conquered and invaded and left their culture everywhere they went. The lost tribe of Dan are the ones who carried Benjamin's wolf symbol with them. They are the ones who fulfilled Genesis 42, verse 27. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. They were Zebulun, who handed the pen of the writer. Judges 5, verse 14, who became Holland and developed the printing press. The tribe of Dan are the ones who carried all the heraldic symbols of Israel to Europe, which exist still to this very day as a witness and clue of their origins with the royal families of Europe from Israel. They were the Druids who built Stonehenge. Pontius Pilate was educated at a Druidic university where the pursuit and debate of truth was preeminent. Hence, his question to Jesus, what is truth? More on who the Danites are, the lost tribe of Dan, when A View from Space returns on Talk Radio AM 640. I'm a guy that calls space. It's A View from Space, Talk Radio AM 640. I communicate by emails. I have two addresses, spaceman@640toronto.com or space@640toronto.com. I've just been describing who the Danites are, the lost tribe of Dan. After all, it was Denmark that was chosen to begin this onslaught with the Muhammad cartoons to foment an ideological war, fan the flames of dissent, pitting one religion against the other and waiting for it to become inflammatory and then begin to fan those flames into a complete global conflagration, which is what their plan is. They named the Danube River Dunkirk. Scota, named Scotland. The Emerald Isle, Ireland, named after Levi's emerald gemstone. The tribe of Dan are the ones who carried all of the heraldic symbols of Israel to Europe. They were the Teutonic Knights who brought the Book of Enoch and more to Europe. The Book of Enoch is the magic of the Kabbalah. more European enlightenment came from them than any other group. The lost tribe of Dan were the German Knights Templar, who built church edifices across Europe. And if you saw them from space, they lie across Europe in the form of a 5-pointed star, 5 representing witchcraft. Scotsman William Wallace, Braveheart, was one of their descendants who fought to keep the old Druidic religion, paganism, instead of asking for mercy, and this is how the people lived. They were Frenchwoman, Joan of Arc, of which it said all of hell opened up to her so the demons could direct the chaos to split Europe. They were the Pilgrims to America, also the Dutch Boers who settled South Africa. Their descendants were the sea and land explorers. The Dutch Boers were the ones who set up the slave auctions and transported the blacks from Africa to the European white households of the rich for slavery. Then to America for labor. Their descendants were the sea and land explorers who've gone to the ocean depths, who faked the landing on the moon. The lost tribe of Dan are the classic composers Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Wagner, Handel. Handel was one who shut himself up to compose the Messiah and who attested to all of heaven opening up to him while finishing his inspired work. Another blood relative was Catherine the Great, who brought Russia into the dark, evil realm that it is. She was the great builder of Russia. They were the originators of the Magna Carta, the rights of man. More blood relatives were John Locke, Thomas Paine, both adherents of natural law principles, were the founding fathers of the Masonic experiment, that is, the United States of America. They're the tribe of Massenet. General Washington, who spoke fluent German. They were also the intellectual genius, Jefferson, who penned the Declaration of Independence, who is proficient in Greek and Latin, who hate all what he called the tyranny of the mind, and who built the great Greek Monticello. Madison, the father of the American Constitution. Patrick Henry declared, "Give me liberty or give me death." The Patriot writer Paul Revere. Nathan Hale, who regretted having only one life to live for his Lucifer. Their bloodline have been geniuses of innumerable inventions or stolen them from others who did have those. They were the French Freemasons who gave America the Statue of Liberty, who snapped the pictures of the Duchess of Cambridge last week, released them. Statue of Liberty, by the way, is really Ishtar. Liberty from what? Liberty from the true God. They were the builders of Washington Monument, that giant Egyptian obelisk on the mall, which connects America to Egyptian high culture. They were the Wright brothers. They were the Lawrence of Arabia character who gave supposed freedom to the Arab people. They were the American Amelia Earhart, who was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic in 1928 and who later flew solo in 1932. And now, Steve Fawcett, also a Danite who set a record for a solo flight around the world. Their blood flowed through the veins of American Charles Lindbergh, who took the first flight solo across the Atlantic. And the German Rudolf Hess. They were the Nazis. This present dark world is an upheaval. As this world system moves toward collapse, the Earth is leaving the 2,000-year-old age of Pisces, the Illuminati believe, the fish or the church age, and is entering Aquarius, the water barrier, an age of spirit and of, well, time travel, telepathy, cloning. The age for their greatest of all their family bloodline to take their place in history as the Antichrist, the culmination of their work and travels through the millennia, their destiny to again be with their father of all lies, Satan. That's their dream. That's their goal. And as I said a few times on AVFS, Talk Radio AM 640, we're living someone else's dream. Now you know the dream. And you know whose it is. Tell me, do you honestly believe there is an ongoing conspiracy to take over the world by installing a one-world government? Well, with all of this Islamic hatred going down in the Western world, what if I told you the world's best-selling book of all time, selling more than 100 million copies a year, is totally based on this conspiracy? I'm talking about a Bible-based conspiracy, because the Illuminati are going to follow the King James Version of the Bible to the letter. If you're not a practicing Christian and have no real knowledge or understanding of the Bible, and if I told you that the Bible teaches about a timeless cosmic conspiracy, it would most likely come as a big shock to you. Why? It's not even well known inside the church, much less the secular world. So why is it that the Bible mentions this spiritual conspiracy that operates from the spiritual realm, but no one in the church talks about it as a conspiracy? Let me see if I can explain that and then say what I think the conspiracy is all about. I'll return in a moment on Talk Radio AM 640. It's AVFS. I'm Space, back with more on the other side. I'm the guy that calls Space. It's a View from Space, Talk Radio AM 640. Emails, space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. So, let me see if I can explain what I just said. and what this conspiracy is all about. Also, let me point out how to recognize the conspiracy that's embedded in the news stories every day. The Illuminati's goal, through their Luciferian plans, plan to introduce a one-world government so that their Messiah can be introduced to the entire world, their leader. This one-world government and their leader is coming. The last thing people want to do at church is think for themselves because of our hectic pace of living in the Western world that's being sped up incredibly by technology. It's made people mentally lazy. We don't have the energy or will to think for ourselves anymore or go and find out something for ourselves. We now want to be told what it is, what to think. Because things that are moving such a breakneck pace, it's easier. It's just easier to accept and be told what to think. Christians want to be told what to do. Christians don't mind doing something. In fact, Christians want to do something as long as it doesn't involve the exertion of the mind, doing research on a subject, logical analysis. That's just the state most people, Christians or not, find themselves in after a long, hard work week. It's meant to be that way. It's meant to be sped up so you cannot take it, so that you will be apathetic. So the Illuminati and their connections with the other groups within the satanic hierarchy, working to bring about the rise of the Antichrist, have an easier job. The moment the word Illuminati is spoken, the person who said it is immediately categorized as, "You're a conspiracy theorist." Well, they could just say, "You're a wacko." The same thing. Because the word conspiracy is being used not to point to someone who is thinking for themselves or is researching a subject and finding things out people never knew. Conspiracy means it's not true, it's kind of way out there, so it can't be true. And that just discounts everything. Even if you're telling them the truth, it discounts it. As a matter of fact, most people, especially in the United States, are totally blinded by this conspiracy through their education system, their patriotism, their blind patriotism, and of course the most powerful tool, the mass media, social network. Wow, is it controlling? And keeps an eye on your thoughts. Social media is able to keep an eye on your thoughts. Because you're tweeting all the time. You're texting all the time. Your Facebook's full of everything you think. It's easy to keep an eye on your mind through technology. Most people think there is no conspiracy by any group to conquer the world. Oh yeah, except for one group since 9/11 who think that maybe Islamic radical fundamentalist extremists might be vying to conquer the West for Allah. So what's really disturbing is the fact that most of those who are truly what's called born-again believers of Jesus Christ are equally oblivious to the fact that there is this Luciferian conspiracy that exists. Why is it, then, that Christians are so ignorant of this spiritual warfare, this constant war between the Creator God of the universe and Satan? This war has manifested itself into real, physical, human, three-dimensional world that we're living in now as we perceive it. So what is going on? Why are Christians so completely ignorant of the fact that Satan is infiltrating our world in a covert way that uses secrecy and conspiracy? It's because the church itself isn't teaching the scriptures and teaching sound biblical doctrines. Instead, they are putting up divisions between the Catholic Church, the liberal Protestant denominations, evangelical Protestant denominations, fundamentalist Protestant denominations, plus the charismatic movement, which gets into whole other areas. There's a wide variety of heresies. What kinds of heresies? A lot of churches are filled with ceremonial religion, ritualism, legalism, praise, musical worship, as well as prosperity gospel, or a pop psychological selfishness, pretending to be purpose-driven. They are attempting to give people a purpose by convincing them that guys like Osama bin Laden wants to destroy their life. There's been a subtle change for churchgoers to be entertained, shamed, degraded, yelled at, sermonized to, and anything else that pretends to be worship when they attend church. But in reality, let's just call what it is. Vanity. The Illuminati has gained control of the World Council of Churches and is programming its people to rise up against Islam. The crusades have never gone away. There have been 20 of them. The first shot for the 21st century, or 21st crusade, began this century, this new millennium. 2001, 9/11, was the first shot fired. Satan and his forces have been running the show on Earth since the days of Nimrod, right up until now. You're not supposed to know or realize this. You're also not supposed to realize all of the United States presidents were and now still are under the power and control of the Illuminati. The satanic force is the same entity that revealed itself to the ancient Sumerians and to Nimrod as a goddess known in the beginning as Inanna in one language, and by Ishtar in another language. She's portrayed in many idol statuettes, holding a torch lamp illuminating the way for her brother, the Babylonian sun god Utu, also known as Shamash, which sounds a lot like U2, doesn't it? The rock band. Well, that's exactly who those musicians who profess to be Christian, U2, really worship. Utu. This goddess was the chief goddess of Babylon and held many descriptive titles which described her statues. Queen of Heaven, she was called, the mother of the harlots, the goddess of love, fertility, the goddess of war, the goddess of freedom, liberty, the goddess of immigrants, the goddess of justice, the goddess of commerce, the goddess of the evening star, Venus as a temporary home, Sirius as her permanent home. She's also known as the Holy Harlot, the Perpetual Virgin, and the Black Virgin. The religious doctrines of Ishtar were called mystery doctrines because the religion of Ishtar was called a mystery religion, and in fact was the chief mystery religion along with the mystery religion of Baal, also known as Mars, Marduk, Merodach, Baal, Ayin, other languages, as well as the mysterious religion of the Babylonian sun called Utu, or Shamash. This means that Ishtar is the woman being described in Revelation chapters 17 and 18. Ishtar is the goddess of the future end-time one-world government called Babylon. Incorrectly by some as Mystery Babylon. The word mystery in Revelation 17, verse 5 is not part of the name Babylon, but it's a description of Babylon. Because Ishtar and her religion is a mystery religion. You've heard the liners that bring me back on this show about that mystery religion. The fact that her title is mentioned within the verse as the mother of harlots indicates that the entire chapter is speaking of Ishtar, the chief goddess of Babylon. It's that Ishtar who holds a world ruler rank in the satanic realm, is in control of, and is the idyllic symbol of a superpower nation of the last days. Because countries are called her, she. Remember now, through the ages, this satanic being was adopted by other nations which changed the name and some of the beliefs. In Assyria, Canaan, and Phoenicia, she was known as Ashtoreth. Isis in Egypt, Astarte in Greece, then later changed to Aphrodite. She was called Libertas in very early Rome. About 600 BC, about 100 AD, and changed to Venus during the peak of Roman power around 480 BC and 400 AD. Venus focused on all or most of Ishtar's rules, while Libertas basically focused on liberty or freedom. You now know what she's called in our day, don't you? She's called the goddess of liberty. Isn't that what the Illuminati are doing wherever they invade? Liberate space. Back with more. Talk Radio, AVFS, returning in a minute. I'm the guy that calls space. It's AVFS on Talk Radio, AM 640. Final segment of tonight's show. The Statue of Liberty is Ishtar. The Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor was presented in 1884 as a gift from the French Grand Orient Temple of Masons to the Masons of America in celebration of the centenary of the first Masonic Republic. That is, or has been, the United States of America. She is holding the Masonic torch of enlightenment, also referring back to the 1700s by the Illuminati Masons as the flaming torch of reason. The torch represents the sun. You see, they're sun worshippers. The Statue of Liberty's official title is Liberty, Enlightening the World. The cornerstone of the statue records how it was laid in a Masonic ceremony. The plaque states, at this site, on August 5th, 1884, the cornerstone of the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty Enlightening the World was laid, with ceremony by William Brodie, Grand Master of Masons in the state of New York, Grand Lodge members, representatives of the United States and French governments, Army and Navy officers, members of foreign delegations, and distinguished citizens were present. This plaque is dedicated by the Masons of New York in commemoration of the 100th anniversary of that historic event. That's the plaque. Now you don't have to go there. Read it. Yes. The Illuminati are going to follow the King James Version of the Bible to the letter. The satanic conspiracy actually begins with Genesis chapter 6 and the introduction of the demons who begin a relationship with humans that ends up in the development of false religions in Babylon. This relationship is interrupted temporarily by the great flood of Noah. After the flood, it starts again with Nimrod's rise to power and the return of satanic forces called demons, and the full development of not only demon worship, but of crossbreeding experiments that begin again between these spirits and human females. Some crossbreeding was apparently accomplished by artificial means in the time of Noah, but later progressed to literal physical sexual interaction using the religion of Ishtar. This information is based on the Sumerian royal records of Babylon as well as the Old Testament Hebrew words like the Anakim. The Anakim is a Hebrew word picked up in part from Sumerian dialects which referred to later offspring which were part human and part demon. There were quite a few of these. Are you ready? A word that you know well. Hybrids, known as Anakim in Hebrew, living in Canaan at the time of Moses and Joshua before Israel invaded the land of Canaan. That's why hybrids are so being pushed on you. Hybrids, half man, half beast, is the original. This is recorded in Numbers 13, verse 33. Where it states that Anak, or the root of Anakim, were the same as the Nephilim, which is the word used in Genesis 6 for the offspring that came about from the intermixing or crossbreeding between the Beni Ha-Elohim, sons of God, and human females. These Nephilim were described as being very tall, giants. Apparently, some Anakim were still around during the early years of King David before his ascension to the throne of Israel. Remember, he killed the giant known as Goliath, who was an Anakim. They were also known by another name, the Rephaim. Pictured on an old coin mold is a Babylonian Ishtar temple. The coin has an image of the Ishtar goddess. What strikes you right away is how tall she is. She's giant-like. Satanic superhuman demons have been operating throughout the ages in one form or another. They're found all over the pagan religions. It was mostly through the different religions, priesthoods, and priestesses' hoods that Satan's world ruler demon kept almost total control of human governments, nations, and empires. A lot of satanic mystery doctrines were also in the Greek versions of Babylonian mystic religious doctrines of Ishtar, Baal, and Utu. These beliefs and rules were encoded in the Pythagorean mysticism and Gnosticism. It was also found in the Egyptian version of Ishtar known as the goddess Isis, the Egyptian name for Ishtar. Gnosticism, by the way, if you weren't sure, is a religion that views matter as evil and freedom is gained through knowledge. That's why Freemasonry has many levels. Each level you're given a certain knowledge until, if you succeed, you get to the level where all is supposedly revealed to you. By the early church period, this Gnosticism of Ishtar battled with the early church fathers for control of the church. The result was the subtle Ishtar beliefs. slowly creeping its way into the church, a little bit at a time, here and there. This is especially true for merging pagan holidays with key dates in early church and Jewish feasts. The Gnostics were the main enemies of Christianity because they blended Christian doctrine with Ishtar doctrine, kept as a mystery by the Greeks. Over the next few centuries, those same Gnostic beliefs began to creep slowly into the thinking of the church right around the time of the Middle Ages. Yes, the conspiracy is now well down the road. Freemasonry developed the Knights Templar, later joined with an organization called the Illuminati, which itself seemed founded in 1776 on July 4th by Adam Weishaupt. But what really happened was Weishaupt just put together a new group to carry on the old traditions of a secret group that began in Babylon, then on to Egypt and Greece, all dating back before the birth of Christ even. Weishaupt was just passing the ancient secrets on to a new group who were given the job of implementing the master plan to forward the plan of the great work, that is the one world government. One man to control the world, who will be entered by the satanic spirit of Satan. Yes, there is a conspiracy. You can see it. They manipulate us through diseases. The stories of the exotic diseases, like right now Ebola, West Nile, and others. Financially, collapse of the economic and financial systems seems so close into coming to fruition, which results in the restructuring of the wealth of entire nations in such a way as to remove wealth from the general populace and bankrupt the general population. All the governments and all of the countries are telling all of the people in those countries, you're broke. You don't have any money. You better give it to the private sector to take over. And the private sector is such a benevolent group, they say, well, okay, we'll take it over. And then control it all. Such developments pave the way for the public to beg to be taken care of in authoritarian governmental management systems, collapsing stock markets, banking systems collapsing, real estate markets going awry, manufacturing, retail businesses going out of business, creating high levels of unemployment. Later, starvation, which will lead to desperation by the public, and a plea for governmental rescue. At the moment, the world's economy is teetering on the brink of collapse. At least that's what we're told. You know how you solve it? I could do it now, right now. Do you know how long it will take to solve the world's economic problems? About as long as it takes me to say, we're forgiving all of the loans and starting over. We're done. That's it. Show's over. Might as well roll the music now. Yeah. Because that's how it's to be solved. Think they'll ever do that? Why? There's a conspiracy to take it all for themselves. This has been a view from space, that's all. On Talk Radio AM 640, coast to coast next. I'm Space, and I'm